Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the National Network for Justice today for a conversation with Mai Moore on juvenile justice issues. And Mai is a member of the National Network for Justice, and I had the opportunity to meet her several years ago, and I think she's just a dynamic person and really out there trying to help some of our young people. Before we get started, we are going to take a moment of silence because yesterday, April 20th, we heard the news that the trial in which a police officer was charged with killing George Floyd in 2020 has come to semi-close. He was convicted. And so we just want to take a moment to not only remember George Floyd and all of the other folks who have died by police violence. We also had an unfortunate killing yesterday of a young woman, 16 years old, that Maya will talk a little bit more about. But we're just going to take a moment of silence and remember these folk. So thank you. Mai Moore is the co-founder and executive director of Eyj, Empowering Youth Exploring Justice, an innovative and timely nonprofit organization committed to social justice and focused on highlighting the voices, contributions, and insights of the next generation. As an advocate for the marginalized, Mai is passionate about supporting students through education, advocacy, leadership development, and data-driven practices. Specifically, she focuses on bringing worlds together, empowering others, building leaders, and social impact. Mai has dedicated her life to creating change in society and the community around police reform, the epidemic of toxic stress, and the digital divide through policy, social policy, programming, youth voice, and research. So with that, I will turn it over to Mai. And thank you for joining us today, Mai.
Thank you so much, Angeline. And thank you to National Network of Justice. I miss you guys greatly. Angeline and I were just talking, and there's almost like no words to describe how we're feeling right now, how society is. It is definitely a challenging time. But just to give a little backstory on who I am, my name is Mai Moore. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I left for 15 years. I was in the tech industry. I lived in New York City, Los Angeles, and Turks and Caicos. Moved back to Cleveland 10 years ago, and then started Eyj in 2013 due to the Trayvon Martin ruling. And just a little bit more about me personally. I am 43 years old. I have a 16-year-old daughter who is half Zambian, quarter Japanese, quarter white. And I'm a single mother. And I, like I mentioned, lived in Cleveland. And, you know, when I was growing up, I was living in Cleveland Heights, which is kind of a diverse neighborhood. It was mainly the breakdown of demographic was white, Black, and Jewish. And I was maybe one of like 3 Asians growing up, but the community I grew up in, I feel like was very diverse. And throughout my high school, time, I went to a school that was very accepting of people as humans versus the color of your skin. You know, as an example, our football, homecoming queen and king, the queen was Black, the king was white. I mean, things like that was very normal to us. It was really more about what are you into? What are your passions in life? You know, who you are, what's your personality, all that kind of stuff. So that's carried through with me all my life. My mother left home when she was 13. When she came to the United States, she barely spoke English. She was also a single mother too. And when I was growing up in Cleveland, I definitely was accepted into many families, and specifically many different types of Black families. So I've had a lot of experience with Black culture on many different realms. And I have witnessed and experienced a lot of obviously oppression and system issues and pain and struggles. As an example, when I was in high school, I had a boyfriend, and he ended up smoking PCP, and he was on a second floor of his apartment and literally jumped off the roof, and now he's paralyzed, to being in a car with my girlfriend and two Black males and actually multiple police officers coming to the car, shining their lights, screaming like, you have a gun, you have a gun. When we didn't have a gun, we were just at a convenience store, to a friend of mine being framed unnecessarily for a robbery and going through the whole justice system. I've had many friends locked up. I mean, you name it. I've had a lot of different experiences. And so, yeah, EYJ, a little bit about EYJ. Really, the truth is, when I moved back to Cleveland, I saw the divide and how segregated it is. And I think naturally I'm a connector, and I love people coming together of all different backgrounds, and I love culture. That's just who I am. And I was just really confused as to why there's 27,000 nonprofits in Northeast Ohio, and yet kids are still in the same, or if not worse, situation that they have been in. And obviously we know that's because of oppression, lack of reform and policy changes that are needed. But it just was mind-boggling to me. And I've been very lucky to travel the world. I've been to, Africa, I've been all over. And just why, if we're in just such a luxurious country with so many resources, why are our kids in the situation that they're in? Why is there an epidemic of toxic stress? Why is there a lack of resources? Why are we not more connected as a society? It's mind-boggling to me. So that was really, I think, part of, obviously the reason why I started EYJ. And like I said, I mean, I have friends from all walks of life, all demographic ages, blah, blah, blah. And, to see people who are not able to fill their calling, I think is ultimately really bothersome to me in such a rich society and culture and country. So when I see, my male Black friends who are maybe my age or older, who are geniuses, right? They are brilliant people with so many solution ideas and so much passion, but they are totally bogged down by our system, society, the circle, all that. It bothers me. It's just, I'm a Libra, so I'm all about justice too. So, but, so EYJ, I never thought I was going to start a nonprofit. I never thought I would have anything to do with social justice or youth, none of that. But literally the Trayvon Martin ruling had happened on a Friday. On the Sunday, I was at church and I was having a conversation with June Antoine. She's obviously one of the founding members. She's now passed away. She was older than me, African-American woman. We literally were having a conversation. I said, we need to do something. We need to do something. And literally grabbed a bunch of Plymouth members. And our first meeting, we created EYJ. And the original idea of EYJ really was more about how do we empower and create self-valued leaders, right? So many of us, and even obviously youth, are lacking support, whether mentally or physically, just love too, right? And a lot of times in our society right now, like, you truly have to be a soldier, no matter how old you are. And you have to be able to rely on yourself and be a self-valued leader. So that was the original principle. And I think that, I obviously relate a lot to these kids. I mean, I had like I said, a mother that was a single mom, and she was working very hard to make her career going. So I, having confusion in society and identity when I was growing up too, like I felt like I didn't have oftentimes people. So I had to rely on myself. And I think the more that kids can be strong internally, the more that we can combat this lovely world that we're in right now. So that was the original idea. EYJ, what we're about is empowering young advocates for change. basically what I say is that we are creating and empowering change makers. So how I explain it is a lot of youth these days have ideas and solutions for social justice solutions, right? Or their community, but they have no clue how to implement them, right? So how do we take these kids, teach them to be the self-value leader, take them to the next step to then be this change maker and guide them, support them, empower them, love them, and teach them how do you create change? How do you create social justice reform? And so that's what we do. And now we've served probably closer to 1,700 youth. We are small, but we are mighty. We are really, really strong and resilient. And we really, I think a principal kind of idea and fundamental idea about UIJs, we do very much value diversity. And the reason for that is personally, I believe that none of us can do this on our own. Everybody comes from different experiences, knowledge, education levels, backgrounds. And I believe that we truly need to come together to create solutions. And we all know, areas of social justice till we're blue in the face, police reform, gun violence, whatever. But we all know it comes down to white supremacy. We all know that it comes down to reform needing to be made. So I'm also, my background is very much about results. I'm very action oriented in results. And it's like, when are we going to stop dilly-dallying and let's get straight to the point, guys. Let's get straight to the point, because there needs to be fundamental reform and change now, as we can see. So,
well, I'm so impressed with the work that you are doing. And we had a conversation last week with James Dold, who's with Human Rights for Kids, and they had done a survey around the country about all of these different parameters that states use to incarcerate kids and, further marginalize kids, and how policy change is what is necessary. And so you focused on these young people and getting them to the place, because they know what's affecting them. It's just how do they change these systems? So could you talk a little bit about changing the systems and how you get kids to think about the situations in which they're in, and how they can affect change themselves?
Number one, it's hard. So what we do is, and just to be clear, we have to be careful that we as a society, we have dumped all our issues on our youth. Let's be very honest. And we then point our finger at them and say, hey, you guys go and fix this. So we have a lot of work to be done on the adult level, as we know. But how we do this is basically through two programs. We have a pathway for our youth. So our first step is our YODJ, Youth Online Discussing Justice program. We partner with different schools, rec centers. And that's when I was talking about that self-valued leader and that self-valued love. That's really what that program is about. And what we do, it's interesting, what we do is we take people from different walks of life. So it could be a returning citizen partnered with whoever, like a Cleveland Clinic doctor, to have relevant everyday discussions with these youth. So we talk about, police youth relationships. We talk about conflict resolution. We talk about toxic stress. So, and we don't go in there saying, oh, we're the expert on everything. That's another problem with society. All of us adults think we're the expert on things. And we don't know anything, right? Look at the society right now. So we go in there just really as humans, authentic, and, we have customized curriculum as a guide and all this, certain design that we do this. But the other thing we really value is the back and forth engagement, right? In society, a lot of times that adults are loudmouths. I'm a loudmouth, right? We are over talking everybody. We are over talking youth. We are not listening to youth. We say we are listening to youth. We are not listening to youth. But the point is to have a back and forth engagement. And the reason why, to be very, very honest with you, we've done over 300 of these sessions. Youth sometimes are more wise than adults, just very honest. And so it's the power behind that is what I've learned over these years is this work is really a lot of times for the adults, these volunteer. We don't say it that way, but it's a lot of times for these volunteer adults because they're waking up to what the issues are. They're realizing, wait a minute, like, am I wrong here? So the point is also then the youth are seeing kind of different perspectives on the issue so that they can form their own thoughts about solutions. The other thing about that program is it's very social emotional related and focused on, but also the mental health. We see so much healing that happens in these sessions. Kids talk about all kinds of things from their mom, burning their hands to, yesterday we just did a session and like 67% of the youth knew somebody that had gotten murdered somehow. Right. Yeah. Like, and then when we ask a question, like, how many of you know somebody that's been locked up? When you see those kids, 100% of the kids, like literally these kids raise their hand when you ask that question, your heart literally breaks. It breaks. So the point is it's knowledge sharing, it's healing for the kids to be able to express themselves. Or for example, if we say to them, say, I love myself, for them to shout that is huge, or them to know that it is not their fault. Everything that they're going through is powerful. And we need to do more of that as humans and adults. But anyway, the point is yes, it's a very powerful program. We're grateful to do that work. And that's for 6th to 12th graders. And then the next step in our pathway is our Eyj Youth Council. The Eyj Youth Council has given us more fame for our work. And they're, very focused on systemic change. It's for age 15 to 25-year-olds. We formed in 2017. And really what they work on is, this is where the tactics and the tools come in of how to actually make change. So it's really about listening to them and then figuring out also their character as individuals, as humans, like what are they good at? What are they interested at? Because not everybody likes to write policy, right? Not everybody likes to create programs. So it's really, I really have even though we're a team of 63, like I have a personal relationship with each of these Eyj Youth Council members, because what the mistake we make in society, it's not us, it comes from capitalism and all that. And when we can talk about that later, but the point is we segment and we silo. And so then we create these buckets of categories of people. Mm-hmm. But what I have learned through this work is even with the work of toxic stress or digital divide, every person is unique in their character and what they're interested in, what their passion area is, and like how they operate, how they work. And so I think that's also a very special thing to understand. So from there, as a collective, they decide what they want to work on. For the last year, because of COVID, they've worked on the digital divide, which has been probably the most powerful work we've ever done. But it's about also as a leader, listening to them. Okay, they want to work on that because they want to help other youth, but then building that relationship with them and understanding, okay, you like to do public speaking, or you're interested in policy, or you're interested in programming, or you like social policy, or you like community organizing, or you like research, or, so it's like breaking them up. And so our youth council is broken into 2 groups. We have a core group and we have the member group, but then empowering them in the areas that they can excel at and that they're passionate about, and then collectively bringing them back together to then work on this issue of the digital divide. Because as we all know, this work is so complex, but I think with my experience in marketing, you have to hit from different angles on the common goal. That's our style. I'm not saying that's the right way or wrong way, but
it's some of the things that you talked about, like having young people in a room where they can actually express what they're going through,
mm-hmm.
Where they could talk about knowing someone who's incarcerated, they could talk about knowing someone who's been killed, whether it's by police violence or extrajudicial, violence or gang violence or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Kids being able to be connected to each other in that way, I think it is really tremendous, because it just allows for, as you say, the adults to sit back and really understand what they're going through. So one of the things that you talked about and you've brought up several times is the idea of toxic stress. And what I'd like you to do is just define that a little bit and talk about how you guys are working within the communities on that.
Um, so first of all, our youth council has declared that 100% of the youth in Cleveland has experienced toxic stress, and there's an epidemic of toxic stress. Basically, in a nutshell, just to be straightforward, is it's basically harm or trauma, that has been left untreated and continues over and over and over. So it's like layers and layers and layers of stress, basically, that is left untreated. And we see that, right? We see that in our society. And it's definitely not, it definitely impacts youth of all, races and all backgrounds. I see it in myself. I see it in my daughter. And what happens is toxic stress then as an adult it leads to PTSD. And that might be a more common term that you guys know. And PTSD, they compare to when the soldiers were in battle, in the army through war, and that's what these kids have. And so, and like with what the youth are going through now, first of all, I've seen a lot in these last 7.5 years. I've heard a lot. I've experienced a lot of pain through just hearing these youth. I have never seen what I see right now. I don't even know if there's a word for what these kids are going through right now. There needs to be a new word on top of toxic stress, to be honest with you. Because again, it goes back to those layers, right? So we have to think about the fundamental oppression and how our system is set up. Then the education system is not set up for youth, definitely not underserved youth, and definitely not Black youth, right? So there's those layers. There's the layers of what's going on home. There is violence, a lot of violence happening right now. There's the pressures of excelling in life and survival. Survival is huge. There is, you guys know this. There's food issues. There's pressures to make money. There's pressures socially. There is now, because of social media and everything on media, kids know information quicker than I do. Yesterday with what happened, with Ma'Khia Bryant, I was just telling Angelina this, my daughter told me about it. And usually we're up to date on everything that's going on in my EYJ team, talking all day. My daughter texted me, right? So, and just to be really clear, when a situation like that happens, let me be clear. What I'm grateful for is before, meaning a couple of years ago, time felt slower. So when situations like Tamir Rice happened, you can see the impact. I'm very aware, you can see the impact and how it impacts people, right? At a slower pace. And to be clear, we could see, even if someone does not know Tamir at all, zero, right?
Right.
A youth is impacted because no youth wants to see another youth be killed, right? So now with all how time is moving so fast and we're getting new, yesterday it was I think there were 5 shootings in the last 48 hours. So you had obviously what happened with George Floyd case. It's just overwhelming information happening, and it's dramatic information, right? So my point is that I personally believe right now that the entire world is sick. I don't think this is not just youth. We are very, very sick as individuals and humans because of everything going on right now. It's overstimulation, and it's not like it's good news or more neutral news. These are very dramatic situations. So mental health, I believe, is everything right now, especially for us who are, what I call social justice warriors, who are doing this work all day long, every day. That self-care is real, and that need for self-awareness is real, and peace is real, real, because we have to protect ourselves. And I can't tell you how many times people are like, "My, you need to be selfish. You need to be selfish." Because I think any of us doing this work are very caring and want to help and, see what needs to be done. But we have to protect ourselves, and that's a work in progress for all of us.
Right.
But my point is we are very, very important, very important.
Yeah. Well, the idea of taking care of yourself, we talked earlier, is key to maintaining the work that we do, right? Because this work is so naturally draining, even if it's not necessarily in the news. We know what's going on sometimes behind the scenes, right? That there may have been a situation that does not get the profile it does on the news, but we know because we're in the work.
Yeah.
I received a call from someone just the other day whose son is incarcerated, and the person's granddaughter, his daughter, tried to commit suicide.
Yep.
Right. And so we hear these stories all the time. And so our level of self-care, and you saying the world is sick, the world is sick. We have been this over the course of this year. Now we've been in a pandemic for over a year. And even prior to that, we were dealing with trauma.
Yep.
And we were dealing with, mental health issues,
Yep.
even prior to that. And so subsequent to that, where you have a pandemic, a major health pandemic, you have people losing their jobs, people losing their homes, their livelihood, all of this. On top of that, the racial injustices that we see, it has to be a point where we just say enough. And stepping back from the television is not always enough. Putting down the phone isn't always enough. It really takes what you're doing, having kids come together to talk about these things, to get out and to know that you're not alone. You are facing maybe different levels of this toxic stress, but you're not alone, because a lot of us are going through it. We don't even realize sometimes, right, that we're going through this stress. We don't realize what our kids are going through.
Yeah.
But we can only imagine that if we're going through this, that the kids are just devastated, because we know what it's like to be young.
Yes.
It's been a little while since I was young.
Yeah, me too.
But
But
a little bit.
I think something that was eye-opening for me that I didn't really realize, like with COVID, is a lot of these youth feel very alone, very isolated. And then there's the anxiety and depression on top of that. And that was eye-opening for me. And then for them to hear that they're not alone, like literally they thought was shocking. They were like, wow, you're going through this too. And I keep expressing that because I see that, no, honestly, not only in our youth, I see it in adult, we're on these Zoom calls all the time. A lot of us are isolated and lonely and all that, but the understanding, to your point, Angeline, that we're going through this together is so key. I think in order to connect with each other and relate to each other and build compassion toward each other, for sure. And yeah, I think that we need to be more selfish. I need to learn how to be more selfish, for sure.
Well, when you posted something the other day, and I'm not always on social media, because I do tend to like step back, because it's just sometimes so overwhelming. Like I know the next couple days I probably won't be on it a lot, because there'll be so many postings about what just occurred, and I just need to protect my mind, heart, spirit, soul. But when you posted, I said I need to reach out to Mai to find out, like, make sure you're good.
Thank you.
Your daughter is good, because it's a lot. It's a lot. And we have to know those cues to when we reach out to people, because people aren't always going to seek it, right? They may post something or they may say something, but if we don't take that extra step to say, hey, are you okay? I'm here for you.
Thank you.
Whatever you need that I can support. And we're in two totally different locations, different states. But having that connection is, I think, really important, and letting our kids know that they can have that connection with other young people who are dealing with it. One of the things that we talked about prior to us getting on this call was the fact that these young people who now witnessed this young girl, 16 years old, being killed by police yesterday, although they were there in the moment and some of them were filming, because that's what we do now, right? We are filming everything.
Yep.
When they've stepped back from that and realized that this was a young person who could have been them,
Yep.
right? They got shot by a police officer. It could have been them. How do we help those kids with that trauma? Because who knows what other trauma they experienced prior to that, and then seeing that, and it's going to be constantly fed,
Yep.
in the news cycle, and they have it on their cameras, their cell phones. How do we help those kids?
Yeah. I don't have all the answers, but as an example, I had posted something about my daughter because she's Black, and she's very in the know about social justice issues. And, it's hard for her. She goes to a private school where people are definitely in a situation where they don't think things like that could ever touch them. So it's a very complicated because, she has to dabble between worlds is what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
And to your point, like hearing about these situations and then for her to watch her, like literally, and I think because she's growing up, to literally realize like this could happen to her. I don't have the words. Does it make me angry, furious, frustrated? I don't have the words. And I think that's why I fight so hard. But to your question, Angeline, the honest truth is spending time, caring, loving, reach out to these kids. That to your point, Angeline, you just sending me an email the other day, like to me, that's so meaningful and touching. But it matters to know someone else is out there, to know that we're being heard, to know that someone is caring, right? And I really, truly believe, just with all this muck and all these layers of issues, love is everything. Love is everything. And how can we as a society learn to respect each other more, embrace each other's cultures, embrace each other as humans? Like, how did we come to a society where like we hate each other? I mean, we know how some ways, but we hate each other. We look at certain cultures as the worst. Yeah. Dogs. I mean, in the bottom of the bottom, like how, like, no, we should be embracing each other. It's fun. It's exciting. Learning about how you think about things, your opinions, or even how we communicate. Like, I love that. Like, people communicate in different ways, or people have different working styles. Like, I love learning about that. What's wrong with us?
And I think, what? I think it's always been there, but I think now, anytime there's like this major happening in our world, that it exacerbates, right? And so the fact that we have a pandemic and people are blaming anyone Asian, right?
Yep.
On the fact that here we are, we're in this pandemic.
Yep.
Well, because you always have to have a scapegoat, because you always have to feel like you're bigger than other people. And I think that it's always been there. The undercurrents have always been there. And it's just exacerbated when we have situations where we have a leader that, stresses it, and we have other congressional members maybe saying things, and we have people in the community that are just aren't willing to accept the fact that this country is changing, that the world is changing.
I hate change.
And there's and we think we have to grasp and hold on to what we have, right? We can't have anyone come in, because someone else could come in and take what I have, instead of looking at the picture that the world is full of resources and we all can share. It doesn't have to be that one person, that 1% of people that are on the top, and all the rest of us are down here fighting each other
Right.
for the pittance, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is a part of the structure that forces us to be in this place where we're grasping, right? We're fighting each other, because they like to see, they want to see. If we're focused on fighting each other, then we're not focused on changing those systemic issues.
The design.
it is totally by design, right?
Yep.
If we are living in a community that is fractured, it doesn't have, any type of economic base, but then we have a private prison coming in saying, look, we'll create jobs for your community, without really looking at, well, who are we incarcerating in those
Right. Are you
prisons?
right? Yeah,
And who is it that we are actually trying to protect ourselves from?
right,
And as soon as, you bring in a prison, then you can have, all of these other businesses that help support that industry that
right,
is prison, that is literally putting people in shackles and
right.
chains. And if the prison industry gets shut down, then they've got to figure something else out, right? And so now it's, oh, well, they shut down this prison, we need to be able to figure out how to use this for something else. So let's use it for the immigrants that are crossing the border, and let's put them in chains.
Yes.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And I don't know if when we went to Arizona, if you had a chance, if you were there when we went to the court, to the immigration court,
That's the shackles. Yeah.
and seeing, people shackled, 50 together, shackled hands and ankles, going through an immigration court because
Yeah.
they crossed the border looking for something better
Yeah.
than what they were receiving in their country. So, I mean, it's multi-layered.
Yep. Here's some, this is, I don't know if this is right or wrong. This has always been kind of my strategy. And I learned this when I was in the tech industry, when I was trying to build connections with companies or whatever, is I would always go to the CEO. Like, I'm like, cut all the BS and all the layers of the different people, meaning not that they're not important, but I was like, let's get straight to the point. And to all the examples that you just made, Angeline, like, let's look at the foundation, the root of all of this. Because the more that we play in these different layers, the more that we're actually helping keeping it going.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? So back to the point about policy reform, right? The layers, the foundation, how is this country set up? How are the criminal justice reform? Who are those people that are the players and actually creating all this harm? Like, get down to the roots and let's change that. That's my personal philosophy and how, because I think we're all tired. We're tired. Look at this, Tamir. This was an example that I gave last week. Look at the George Floyd case. I apologize. George Floyd case. How much money have we spent over this last year when he was murdered? How much time have we spent? How long have we been in court? How much impact on the world's mental health on this case, right? When we know that George Floyd was murdered, right? But to your point, by design, okay, let's buy time. Let's like play this out, let's try to save these select few white supremacy people, right? It's by design. It's all by design. And it's harming our community. It's harming our community. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but again, my point is, like, let's cut the BS. We know what the truth is. Let's get to the point of what we need to change versus all these layers and games, and just who has time for that?
Yeah.
Especially us. We're the ones who are doing the work. We're exhausted.
Oh, more than exhausted, right?
So it's like we have to save our energy. We have to be strong within ourselves. We have to save our energy. So let's put our energy and our power, because we have a lot of power. Let's put it to what is actually going to fundamentally create the change.
Right, right. No, I hear exactly what you're saying. And working with young people and getting them in a mindset where they are able to look at other people who are not like them,
Mm-hmm.
and accept them for who they are, to hear differences of opinion, to be able to have intellectual conversations and then try to come up with solutions, I think is the key. Because honestly, some of our adults, we're just lost. Like, we can't sit down and have conversations.
Yeah.
We need these young people. The young people are going to be the ones to set us free, are going to be the ones to create change, because it can't, and it's a mindset, right? I was posting yesterday about the mindset of of someone who would put their knee on someone and treat them as if they were less than human, right?
Yes.
That mindset is not just within the police department. That mindset is with that CEO. That mindset
Yes.
is with the average, neighbor in a community who thinks you shouldn't be there, who you shouldn't live there, and you shouldn't have certain things. That mindset is that teacher who's teaching your daughter who doesn't think your daughter should be in
Yes.
this private school. So it's that heart mind thing that we need to get to, because if we're not if we can change all these laws and we can do all these policy changes, but there's still going to be people who think that this house is ours, right? We had in January people storming the Capitol, this insurrection thing, saying this
Mhm.
is our house. Well,
Yep.
who was the our?
Right.
Who was the our? And to have people walking in with Confederate flags, what does that represent? Right? That doesn't represent the
Can you
entire,
imagine youth that were watching that? Like,
just
hey,
seeing like,
you can do whatever you want in this
whatever
world.
you want, whatever you can storm the Capitol and you can walk out and you can have people helping you down the steps, right? But during Black Lives Matter protests, they're guarding the Lincoln Memorial because they think that the Black Lives Matter protesters are going to come in and
Yep.
deface the Lincoln Memorial.
Mhm.
So that mentality that those people are in the wrong, but these people are in the right, and it's creating the separation, and it's always been there. It's just now out more.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so again, having the ability to talk to these young people about what's going on in their lives, and trying to do self-care for ourselves because without self-care for ourselves, we will not be able to help these young people. And I just think that the work that you guys are doing is so needed. It's
Thank you.
so valuable. It's so critical
Thank
in
you.
this stage that we are right now. And
Thank you.
so with that, I just want to give you, an opportunity to say any last minute things,
Um,
how do people get in touch with you? How do they get
sure.
involved? What should we do? All of that.
Sure. Last minute things. I love you all. And I appreciate each one of you. And what I do want to plug is we do have a very powerful event called the EYJ Empowering Changemakers event, June 4th. It's going to be virtual. It's from 5 o'clock to 8:30. And actually, Pauline Rogers and Gail Muhammad are going to be on in that event. We have over 35 speakers, and we have panel discussions on criminal justice reform, fashion, NFL, digital divide, politics, and social media influencing. We're trying to change the game a little bit and demonstrate by example change makers. So definitely would love to have all you guys there. But yeah, how you guys can find me, I think many of you know, but you can email me at mai@eyej.org. Definitely check out our website, eyj.org. And I think the last things I want to say is like, we all need each other. And I know this work is hard, but to be around like-minded people is so reassuring, and there's a comfort there that we can understand from each other. So, and I agree, Angeline, mindset is everything right now, and changing the mindset, thinking outside the box, and protecting yourself is, I agree, very important.
Yes, no doubt. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, I missed you. I
No.
miss all NNJ members. Um, I'm really hopeful that maybe next year we will actually be together in person, because we set the network up to ensure that we could get together and network,
Yeah,
see each other, and
right.
provide those opportunities. And unfortunately, that has not been the case for us. So thank you for joining us in this conversation.
Thank you, Angeline. Thank you so much.